Live, going live. We're live. Okay, we're live. We're on the Tech Talks. This I missed last week, so I got to watch it on Zoom on YouTube later, but I wasn't here live. So this is like a part two, right?
Yep, this is a part two. And it's the final tech talk of the fall term.
Yeah, you're right.
So welcome to the end of the term, just so we're clear. So this is a continuation and here, all of these things are happening at once. So this is, like Caleb said, a part two of our series on iterative feedback. So we talked last week about using iterative feedback in the sort of mid-term. Now we're thinking ahead. So we're kind of weirdly going backwards. We're thinking about building out courses for next term. What can we do now that we're in the middle of our builds, or maybe at the beginning of our builds, thinking about actually having these be part of our course packages. Like, what are we doing for students with feedback? So our goals for today are we're gonna do a little refresher on iterative feedback. We're gonna talk a little bit about pre-planning iterative feedback. We're gonna talk about start of term surveys. So what can we do at the start of term? We're going to talk about module and unit surveys as an option that folks can use. We might spend a little bit of time again on just how do we build a survey in Canvas as a little refresher. So sound good? Awesome. So let's get started with getting some information. So at the beginning of the term is a big opportunity, right? It's a big opportunity for students. It's a big opportunity for instructors to set the stage for what a course can look like. We want to talk about getting information before a course starts and creating a setup that we can get feedback at consistent points in the course, right? We want to think about how we can get a good baseline of information and how we can keep getting that information iteratively, right? So as the course is moving forward, and that we can use those pieces of information to give us a fuller idea of what the course experience is for our learners. So let's talk a little bit about start of term surveys. I'm going to share my, just gonna start by sharing our screen. Shouldn't have that many windows open, and yet I do. All right, so we should be seeing a Canvas course. Looks like, okay. All right, so let's talk a little bit about where to put these things to begin with. For a start of term survey, I always put it in the first week, right? So this is an option that we can use. Some folks will put it in like a module 0. That's a begin here, pre the course, right? The very first thing that you do. For in-person on-ground courses, it tends to work better if it's in the week because you can guide students to it. For an online asynchronous course, it might be a pre-module, like a module 0, like I said. So these surveys are the types of getting to know you surveys. A lot of folks I know are already using these. Some folks will have like early semester tickets or early term tickets where it's just like, who are you? What do you do? What do you want me to know as your instructor? Like I said, a lot of folks are probably already doing this in some fashion. So we can just kind of talk about what sorts of questions we can design. But also what we want students to understand of this, right? Why are we asking them to do this? Rightly so, a lot of folks will ask the question of, why do you need this data from me, right? Because remember, we are gathering data points. So we want to be able to tell our students and be transparent about why we're gathering data and what kind of data we're gathering. So for me, whenever I write an introductory survey or a start of term survey, I like to tell them, here's what I'm asking you for. This is for me to get to know you and your needs and expectations in the course. I do make it part of the a graded option. You can make this a thing this is the first thing that they do. I also tell students that you don't have to answer all the questions on this survey.
I like that.
There are things that you don't have to disclose to me should you wish not to. And I make sure to let them know that the information that you share will only be seen by me as your instructor, making sure that they understand this is not something that's going to your classmates. This is something for my eyes only.
Right.
The nice thing about doing it in Canvas is that we have a little bit more assurance about that. I will admit, I've done it in the past using Microsoft Forms, Google Forms. I don't love doing that because it takes students out of the infrastructure, out of the environment that they're already a part of.
Sure.
So I like to use Canvas for this, and
I think it's important to make clear, when you are doing a survey like this, it's private, but it's not anonymous, right? It's between you and the student, but you're asking them to identify themselves in this kind of survey, right?
And that's even something you can say. Something like Caleb just said, this survey is private. Meaning, it's between you and me. But it is not anonymous.
Yeah.
So students will know that, this is not something that is just sort of floating around on the internet. But also, yeah. Oh, Nick put in the chat, like how this differs from introductory discussion boards and that it feels less performative. Students don't have to feel like they need to be making an impression. They're providing information that can help their instructor be responsive to their needs.
That's a great point.
That's a great point, Nick. That's really one of the things that I love about this, is that students are not sharing this with each other. They're not trying to be the smartest in the room. They're not trying to maybe hide things that they want to hide, highlight things that they want to highlight to each other. Really, this is between you and them. I even sometimes, you'll see in the survey. All right, so some question types. So I'll just show you some of the questions that I've used for this survey. And it's not exhaustive by any stretch of the imagination. It's more about question types. So the types of questions that you can build out in these surveys they range, but I've kind of broken them up into different categories. The first category is the identity question, and it's things like name, right? Chosen name, nickname, pronunciation of your name, pronouns. This is something that I think for marginalized students, it's important to know these things and to acknowledge that you might not already know these things. So you might have a student, like, for example, my name. I've got a first name and then a middle name, and I have a nickname that I use. Right, so if you looked at anything, it'll say Ellen Cassandra, but nobody calls me that. And if you call me that, immediately I'm like, ugh, like this is not who I am. So things like that. Pronouns. Students, a long time ago, we used to talk about student pronouns in a very public way. We used to be like, hey, everybody, go around and tell me your pronouns. That can out a student who might not want to be outed, and it can also make a student feel outed, right? So I think about folks who are stealth or passing. They might respond negatively to having a moment of, hey, you're asking me my pronouns. Oh my God, does that mean you know? Right? This is a way that you can again say, this is a survey for everybody, and I just want to make sure that I know everybody's pronouns. I also have something in here, I think, or I don't actually, about how to ask for pronouns. So that's something that you can be really critical about. You could say, what pronouns, one of the things I do, what pronouns would you like me to use when referring to you in class? And what pronouns would you like for me to use when referring to you outside of the class? Like if I'm bragging about you to another instructor, and maybe you see me as somebody that you can be out to, but maybe not another instructor. Or maybe you are, there's going to be some differentiation here, and you can build that into these questions as you ask them, because again, they're private. The student knows that this isn't really about them in the sense that you're saying, I know that you are this thing. Rather, I know that this thing exists, right? This identity category exists, and identities are complex.
And I want you to have control over how much you want to disclose at different levels and in different layers within our community.
Right, absolutely. And that's what I love about the survey. It's just like, this is between the two of us.
I also like in your question too, how you're kind of stealthily also
right.
framing how you would like to be referred to them. You're doing it in kind of a tutorial sort of way, but also you're saying, hey, this is how my name is pronounced. Please don't
Call me Casey. Right. Yeah, I use myself as an example in this. When I'm teaching, I will it's not sarcastic, it's silly. If I want my students to call me Professor Dame Griff, I will write it out phonetically, Professor Dame Griff, Dr. Dame Griff. because I want to model that for them also. A lot of folks haven't had that modeled for them, right? How to write something out in terms of a pronunciation. And for some students, they might think that their name is quote unquote normal. Well, guess what? Names are not normal. There's a Key and Peele sketch about names that I think is really fun, that inspired some of this, right? Because I may think my name is Mike. Mickey, right?
Okay,
Right, Bully K.
Yeah.
Right, so we get to play a little bit with that, but then we can also model for them, what we want them to be thinking about.
I like that.
So this is the identity stuff. Other stuff that we have that we can build out here are life things, right? So I don't have it in here, but a question you could ask could be something like, does the student work? Right? Are they working full time? Are they on a sports team? Do they have child or elder care responsibilities? Do they commute? Are they, over 25? Are they in like a different part of their life situation? One of the things that, I never thought to ask was whether or not a student was active duty. Because they have responsibilities that are vastly different from my expectations of a student, right?
Well, and teachers also have a legal duty to provide certain accommodations for active duty members as well.
So knowing that, and being willing to say, I know this about you, hey, let me gather this data for myself, right, as an instructor.
So would you break those each out into individual questions, or would you have a more open-ended question than let them decide what they want to disclose?
I'd probably do a multiple, like a yes, no, true, false, like I am this, I am that. And then I would probably have another essay type question that allows them to say, is there anything else about your lived experience or lived situation, particularly, in general, or just this term? It could be just this term that their partner has been deployed.
Sure.
Right? Like just this term, this is what's happening in my life.
Yeah. Or they're gonna be moving houses halfway through the quarter or
and
something.
they know it's happening, or this is something that I'm dealing with right now. So giving students the opportunity to talk about that. And I call that the life stuff category. Another category I think about, you can see this one here, is a basic needs category. We talk a lot about basic needs, but it's things that are specific to your course. So do you have a mobile device with Wi-Fi capability? That's important. A lot of our students are what we call next million users. They're, coming to us from all over the world, lots of different situations, and they're coming to us with a mobile device. So we need to know, like, are you using a mobile device? Are you using a laptop or a desktop computer? That's going to change things about how you even engage your course design. We talk a lot about making sure that, something's accessible, but we're thinking accessibility on a laptop, not necessarily a phone, which is going to be different. Things like, do you have everything you need for the course? And that can be a quiet space. Do you have access to the books for the course or the course requirements, the things that I'm asking you to have? This can be a way for you to flag, the student doesn't have a study space. I know where the study spaces on campus are. I'm the instructor.
Well, I think that's doing two things at once too. One is it's giving you that opportunity to connect them to resources if they need it. But it's also kind of setting expectations for students of, I need to go get that book. I haven't gotten the textbook yet, and I probably should because she's asking about it.
Right.
But you're doing it in a non-judgmental, non-confrontational way of just kind of setting expectations while asking questions.
Yeah. And as Nick points out, tell you a lot about how easy or difficult it is for students to get connected to those resources, can also help pinpoint start of term access pinch points. That's what this is all about. What's a pinch point? For example, I'll give you an example of how this came to fruition for me. I had a course where students were supposed to design a podcast as their final project. And I asked this question, do you have a quiet place to work? And a student said, no. You need a quiet place to actually do a podcast. So I found them a space on campus. We had a podcast lab, and I said, this is where you can do this final project. To make sure that my course was accessible to them, right? That was knowing that pinch point was there. I could go back to the survey and say, oh, I know that this is a problem. I can fix this. I can do something about it. I can plan for it. So that's the life question or the basic needs questions. We then have demographics questions. And again, remember FERPA. Please remember FERPA. This cannot be shared. But things like first gen, right? Parental college experience, sibling college experience, religious practices that might not be on the calendar, right? Like this is a massive, massive thing. I taught at a Catholic university and I had Jewish students. It wasn't on the calendar.
Well, and in Washington State, you have the faith and conscience
Right.
absence policy where we're obligated legally to allow students, if they give us notice, to take time off for religious observances, holidays, that kind of thing.
Right, and that's gonna matter if you have something where a student must be somewhere for something and it's a high holiday.
Yeah.
And you didn't know that, right? These are things that we can think about and that gives us again an opportunity to examine. We can talk about things like student expectations. Maybe it's the first time they've ever taken an online course, right? What are they expecting from it? What do they already feel confident and comfortable doing? So these expectations questions can also come into bear, you can build them out here. And the last one that I have here is learning. And I don't mean like learning types. What I mean are things like students' first language, right? Are they an English language learner? Do they have ways that they are comfortable processing information? Or that they can signal like, I really love video because I can watch that, or like I have a long commute. Boy, do I love it when there's a podcast, right? These are the kinds of things that you can get from students. You can also learn things about them in terms of typing and writing. If a student perhaps is really a super fast typer, that's a good thing to know, and you don't necessarily want to say, well, all of your stuff has to be written out by hand, right? Or vice versa. That's a good thing to know. One caveat I want to sort of point out is that this doesn't mean you have to build your course around all students and their particularities, right? Rather, you're getting to know what their particularities are, their experiences and their needs, so that you can build out ways to be flexible and meet needs, right? So that's kind of
And also I think it could potentially prevent you from making negative assumptions about a student once they start doing work. So if if it's week 2 or week 3 and a student is turning in handwritten notes and you weren't expecting that, you might be wondering what's going on. If you look in the course analytics and they watch all the videos, but they haven't looked at the PowerPoints, if they told you that they prefer video or podcast or whatever, then that can also kind of help you understand what's going on with that student.
Yeah, it gives you a little bit more about who they are. And that's really the goal of this start of term survey. So some of these questions, if you want them, we can share them, we can put them somewhere where folks can dig around and find them, send them out. That was a question we had from the last process of this too. People are like, oh, these questions, can I have them? Yes. So that's the sort of welcome survey, the introductory survey. You see, I put it in week 1. Let's pretend we're in week 4 now. The other piece of this is the module or week survey. And so these are ones that you can think of as sort of like exit tickets. You can grade them, you cannot grade them. So I used to make them extra credit for students because I love giving out points and just, you get a point, you get a point, you get a point. I'm very Oprah about it. But this is a way to get quick feedback on a discrete unit of the course. So you'll see for these, this is not actually the week 15 survey, that's the week 4 survey. What I actually do is every one of these would go to a different week. So every week has a survey and they don't need to be extreme. They don't need to be extensive. It's just an opportunity for them to let me know something about the module or the week. So what worked, what didn't work? Is there something that I could have done better? It's really kind of going back to last week's conversation, a way for students to feel that you are responsive to their experience in the course. I have some extra stuff here about, is it anonymous? Is it extra credit? Is it graded? So some of the questions here that you can see are, for example, I really wanted to know how this reading felt in terms of length. I thought it was kind of a chunky reading. Like I was like, this one's a little bit long. Here's how I feel about it, but I want to know how they feel about it. So it could be like a multiple choice question. This reading felt too long enough. I didn't get through it. This is like that temperature check.
Sure.
So this is the temp check idea, right? So what's going on with how the students are feeling? Did they feel like we did a good job covering all of the readings? Or is there a reading that I clearly favor and am clearly teaching more than another one? And maybe I just need to pull that other one out because I'm not spending a lot of time in it in the classroom. So that's that sort of like, alignment check. Is everything that I say that I'm doing, am I doing it? The next is like a tech check type question.
That's
So like, did everything work? Because usually students don't tell you, or one or two will be the ones who are like your herald cases that are like, hey, that link was broken.
I just a couple weeks ago, I had an instructor who realized that several of their hour-long lecture videos had not recorded sound, and the students didn't tell them because they never asked.
Right.
So
So ask,
ask.
please ask.
Yeah.
Did everything work? Hopefully it did, and if it didn't, you know what's wrong. You can go back into your Panopto and be like, oh my god,
Yeah.
something's bad.
Yeah.
I like the tech check. Another thing that I have in here, here's another tech check, all the tech checks, are sort of an alignment check in the sense of, how are the students doing with this? Is everything kind of going together? Where do you feel like you are with this? So, especially for new courses, this is not actually the question that I'm thinking of. There's another question, where I asked, did all of the activities and readings go together? And this is about constructive alignment. So this is the outcomes coverage assessment question. Do students understand why these things go together? Do they feel like the quiz that they took had adequately been discussed? The topics that we're discussing. And then this one's more of a temperature check, question 6 here. How's it going for you? Like, do you feel ready? Because we talked about counter mapping this week, and do you feel like you understand counter mapping? If a student says no, I might need to go back to that, right? This is helpful for me.
I've got a question for you,
Yeah.
Cassie. What do you think about including like some metacognitive prompts in these kind of weekly surveys? Where you're not just asking for feedback, but also maybe kind of stealthily getting them to think about their own workflow and their own thought process?
Absolutely. So it could be, do you feel like you gave yourself enough time this week to do this thing? I think Angela put something in the chat. I think she literally used the word metacognitive.
Oh, perfect.
There you go, metacognitive reflections on learning. Absolutely. Like give them a chance to do that. What could you do differently next week or next module to make you feel more comfortable, confident, prepared, etc.?
And you could pair that with a question, what could I do to help you feel more confident, prepared, etc.
Right.
So then it's a back and forth. They might be identifying something that you overlooked.
Yeah.
Or they might just be realizing that they need to kind of step up their game or do something differently.
Yeah.
Makes it a little less confrontational.
Yeah. One thing that comes to mind is, sometimes students feel like, oh, I didn't really talk in class this week because I wasn't prepared. Maybe there's a way that you can prepare yourself next time. Maybe you write questions, so, kind of giving them that opportunity to reflect back on themselves. And I think the metacognitive question is a really good idea for these, especially early on as students are learning the course.
Sure.
And then finally, this is like a temp check that I think of, did students, and this is especially if you're teaching something that is maybe really complicated, potentially difficult in lots of different ways. So I used to teach, as a lot of you know, I used to teach critical race and ethnic studies, making sure that students felt supported and safe during a particular unit that may have been difficult in a lot of different ways, right? So did we do a good job of that? Was group work the best way to do this thing? Maybe not, right? Maybe they needed more silent reflection. Maybe they needed something that didn't, wasn't public. Like this kind of gives you a little bit of feedback on that. And the point of all of this, or these in particular, is to give you these like spot check-ins on particular aspects of the course. The units, the modules, the weeks. So I always organize my course in terms of weeks. So every week I would have something like this. Or if I organize my course where there's like a 2-week module, it was all about the module. Or if you want something really specific, like you really want to know, you tried a new exam type, you blessedly opened new quizzes. You activated it and you got excited, and Angela's eyes got real big. And you want to see how it went for them. You tried new quizzes and you want to see how it went for them. You can write these based on, they don't all have to be the same, right? They can be specific. So the real goal for these is to think about what you need to know from your student, right? The whole point of iterative feedback in this series is to remember that the course is never done, right? It is a work in progress. You are likely to teach it again. And even if you're not teaching it again, you can make it better from week to week, module to module.
I think there's also another positive kind of knock-on effect there
Mhm.
when it comes to your end of quarter student evaluations, which is a fraught, difficult topic. But anecdotally, I don't have any research to back this up yet, but anecdotally, I've talked to other instructors who do things like this. And by and large, they find that their end of quarter student evals tend to be better, more positive, more constructive when they've been doing these kind of regular check-ins, surveys, feedback mechanisms. Because now the students feel like they're being heard, they feel like the instructor is being more responsive to their needs, maybe preventing some frustrations. And I think in general, despite all the potential problems that evals have, this can help with that.
This is an opportunity also for you as an instructor to say, I'm pretty intentional about the work that I'm doing. I think about folks who are tenure track and going up for tenure, thinking about how they want to narrate themselves as teachers, right? Part of that process is figuring out who you are as a teacher. This could be part of your narrative, right?
Put that on your brag sheet.
Right, put this on your brag sheet, that I intentionally engaged in iterative design of my courses. Wow, hot. Like, we love that. We do.
Yeah.
Or I redesigned the next semester or the next term based on student feedback. Wow, that's amazing work.
Continuous improvement.
Continuous improvement. Like, you really, you found that in the, yep, and you did it, right? You got a great example, and you can even show, here's what it looked like before, here's what it looks like now, here's what I did. So the tech part of this, because I don't want to leave you hanging on the tech part of this, I just always want to make sure that we're doing that. Hope there's something in the chat. Sorry to run. Bye, Angela.
Bye.
So if you watch the series, or if you watched the first one last week, you already know this. But when you build out an ungraded survey or any type of survey, you are doing it in classic quizzes, please. New quizzes will not allow you to do that. So I just went into quizzes, chose a quiz engine, classic quizzes, did not remember my choice for this course. Please do not click this button. You can, but it will kind of lock you out of new quizzes in the future. We can fix that, but not right now. So go ahead and submit, build out your, you can call it whatever you need to call it. Where you need to be is in the quiz type. It is a survey. So if you're going to grade the survey, a graded survey. If it is an ungraded survey, click ungraded survey.
And graded survey is participation points only. There's no right or wrong answer. If they do it and hit submit, they get the points. Ungraded surveys do not connect to the grade book whatsoever.
So it's up to you. I like to do an ungraded survey, and then I have like an extra credit category that I'll throw in there. Or if you want them to earn those points for being a participant, maybe you have a participation category in your course. People do.
Sure.
A graded survey is a great way to quantify that a little bit. So wanted to make sure that we got the tech aspect of that handled. Remember, you're going to go into your quizzes and you are going to build a classic quiz.
And then a graded survey or ungraded survey.
Graded or ungraded
and then all
survey.
the rest of these settings are very similar to any other quiz.
Yeah, and do what you will with those. There are no correct answers. So that's really what we've got for you today. This is the end of that series. We can always talk iterative feedback at any point. We're happy to help with course or with, survey design, some of the questions that I mentioned. I think what we'd like to do over here in e-learning is create maybe a question bank. There are a lot of these by the way, you can find a lot of these questions online.
Sure.
A lot of places, different institutions will have examples of good survey questions.
Some of them based with a research backing as well.
Yeah,
So
some
you
of
can
them
find
are,
that stuff.
you can find that, but we'll also come up with ones that we, that I've mentioned here. Kind of come up with like a compendium of these types of questions that you might wanna consider designing.
Awesome.
So, yeah, that's all I've got.
And that does it for Tech Talks for fall 2024. We will return in winter quarter. We're still around though, obviously,
Yes.
so keep in touch. We're not going anywhere, but we will see you on Tech Talks in January.
That's right.
Bye all.
Bye.
Stream.
Yay.